we're having a get started, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
What up, Nashville?
Are we started?
The clock didn't start yet. I don't know.
She wanted to moderate it.
Okay. So the previous session is all about OP-CAD. Like this one is like the opposite. We don't do that. We want to see what we can do with Bitcoin without like doing a soft fork. And like today's panel, you have actually a lot of the like good people in like the BVM ecosystem. You have Rubin, who actually the inventor of the BVM, and you have Jeremy, who will talk about like what he is working on like now related to like BVM, and Liam have been working on Snark in like BVM, right? Okay, so I think it would be good to just let everyone introduce about themselves and what they have been working on. So I think I can start with like Robin.
Yeah, my name is Robin. I wrote the BitVM white paper, and I'm working on BitVM 2 together with my team. And yeah, I'm mostly excited about scalability of Bitcoin, like scaling Bitcoin payments to billions of people. That's what excites me.
I am Jeremy. I'm a Bitcoin research and developer. I am cited in the BitVM paper.
Yeah, of course.
And then have been doing some development on the peer-to-peer layer of BitVM and other layer 2 protocols recently.
Hi, I'm Liam. I work at Alpen Labs. I've been doing kind of Snark research for a while and trying to figure out how to make it sort of work with Bitcoin. And BitVM is currently the most feasible way to do that. So I guess related to BitVM, I've mostly been working on making Snark verification as efficient as possible with BitVM, with the goal of being able to build a rollup and scale Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I think like we can start with like a very like good question. So remember that the BVM white paper was kind of like late last year, right? And like now like roughly half a year already passed. Actually, there's so many teams working on that right now. That's really so many. Most of the Bitcoin layer 2 are basically saying that they are working on BVM, and a few teams actually spend a lot of the effort in building over BVM. And that like we know about 2 days ago, 2 teams announced that they already have some preliminary result in kind of doing BVM and on like mainnet on Bitcoin. So what do you guys like want to like talk about? What is kind of the current progress? How soon can we have like BVM in production?
I think maybe just in this audience it might be good to start a little bit higher up of just like what is BitVM?
Okay.
Like what's the fundamental breakthrough here? Because I think even though we're all familiar with it, people might need a little bit of a get up to speed.
Okay, who wants to talk about like what is actually robbing? Like, tell everyone a little bit about BVM.
Yeah, on a high level, BitVM is a programming paradigm that enables more sophisticated smart contracts on Bitcoin. And in particular, it allows to verify SNARKs, so proofs. And it's, I think mostly interesting to scale Bitcoin payments with things like Rollups, Sidechains, also ZK coins, which is another protocol that I'm working on also with Liam. And yeah, that's on the high level. And on the lower level, it's optimistic computation. So in contrast to, for example, Ethereum, in Ethereum, the entire network has to execute essentially every computation that you're doing on the EVM. And in BitVM, the paradigm is a bit different. It uses that optimistic paradigm, which is essentially working such that one person makes a claim. They just claim, hey, this computation ended in this state. And if that claim is correct, then everybody is happy and nothing really happens on the chain. But if it's incorrect, then you can challenge them and you can disprove them. And that aligns the incentives for everyone to be honest. And it's in practice hopefully a bit more efficient than how the EVM works.
Wow, that's like great explanation. Like, so then I think then what I would draw to that question is that like because now it has been several months, how do you see like what happened in the past several months for the BVM?
Yeah, for me, it's obviously very exciting to see so many people working on BitVM or like on their own flavor of BitVM. And yeah, of course, I'm very happy to see that. I saw these 2 announcements from yesterday or the day before yesterday. Unfortunately, I didn't have much time to check it out in much detail yet. But yeah, I'm excited to see all these things. I'm not quite sure, like, if it actually works as well as they claim. I hope it does, but we, like my team has been working on BitVM 1 first, and then we saw that there are a couple issues with particularly building bridges. And so then we came up with BitVM 2, which was a more efficient version of BitVM 1, which enabled more capital efficient bridges. And as far as I know, the other 2 projects that just made that announcement, they are working on the BitVM 1 model. And as far as I know, it's a bit more complex to build bridges with the BitVM 1 model. And yeah, but I'm happy to see what they are coming up with.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned about BitVM 1, right? Like in the about I think a few months ago, we have also started to talk about like BitVM 2. Like, can you kind of provide us with more information about that? Why you kind of like go to BitVM 2? Because you mentioned that BitVM 1 is a little bit more complicated, but that was actually the version in the white paper, right? And like for BitVM 2, what is BitVM 2 like? Because I think a lot of the audience might not know about BitVM 2.
Actually, in the white paper, I described a very basic version that was not. It was never meant to be built in the real world. It was just to make the argument that we can build very expressive systems. I tried to point out that there are way more efficient ways to build them than the way that I described in the white paper. But yeah, some people got confused and thought that it's actually the way how it is intended. But that's not. It was never meant to be that.
I think in terms of terminology, there's a fundamental new technique that everybody is playing with. And what that new technique is a way of, when Taproot was made, it was saying you can take a big script that has independent pathways, so independent sets of conditions that could be satisfied to spend, but there is no way of connecting those together because they're completely independent. And what Rubin came up with was a way of passing data effectively from one leaf to another leaf. And that's this new technique that people are just kind of, if they're using that technique, they're saying that they're a BitVM. And there's also BitVM, which is the actual project that Rubin is working on, which is a more specific thing than that. And maybe we can call that thing the Linus transform. If you take a function and you split it up like that, that's a Linus transform. BitVM, that's the project that Rubin is using the Linus transform.
I think it's also cool to mention that more or less Jeremy came up with BitVM. He wrote this awesome article about Lamport signatures. And he actually sent me that article in 2020 or 2021. And then I forgot about it. And then I reinvented it. And then it took me quite a while to actually notice that BitVM is mostly Jeremy's work.
Well, that's a very important information. So, and then I guess I would just kind of also ask Liam is that so because one thing in BVM 2 is that you kind of start to build a VM that is very specific to verify Snark, right? And Snark have never been easy. So what is, because I know you in Alpen have been working a lot with, and you have that also very important paper on how to proving pairing, which actually significantly cut the cost. You probably see that in the BVM repo is kind of already down a lot. Do you want to say something about that?
Sure. So part of the history of BitVM is the BitVM 1 protocol that Rubin was working on actually is in some sense a VM, right? So you have a computational trace, and then there's this what's called bisection, where you split it into halves and over a series of rounds. And one, I think, development that many people have arrived at is the primary thing you want to do with BitVM is verify a SNARK. So a SNARK is a succinct non-interactive argument of knowledge. It's like a zero-knowledge proof. And it allows you to prove anything. It's kind of like a universal verification primitive. And so if you only want to verify SNARKs, you can kind of simplify the design and take advantage of that kind of application-specific thing. And this is particularly important for BitVM 2, which has different scaling properties with respect to the kind of thing you're BitVMing or Linus transforming. And so I think for BitVM 2, the computational trace model probably doesn't make as much sense. But verifying a snark does, and it allows you to kind of move it up one level.
So can I maybe ask a question about snarks? Do we, for BitVM, truly need snarks, or because we're in a strongly on-chain interactive context, could we do like interactive probabilistically checkable proofs, and is there a potential optimization there?
That's a great question. So snarks are part of like a larger family of types of protocols, and one thing that I've thought about a little bit but haven't come up with anything interesting is optimizations along this line. So for example, BitVM requires covenant emulation, and so there's a kind of trusted setup, sort of. And one type of snark that's not used very much is like a designated verifier snark, where there's a particular person who can verify it. And so if you have a particular set of challengers, for example, you could theoretically use a different kind of thing and get some benefit there. But as it stands right now, I'm not aware of any kind of like clear wins. Snarks, for those who don't know, have experienced like a super Moore's Law kind of improvement over the last 5-10 years. It's like a 10,000x speed up. So I mean, at this point, they're fast enough you can kind of just throw stuff at them and it sort of works out of the box.
Yeah, and I think maybe the reason more fundamentally why there might be some opportunity is that for a lot of the ways that, for example, like Stark, which is a specific kind of snark, works, is that you have a protocol that you run that gives you like a 10% chance of cheating, and you can chain it together hundreds of times, and then once you've done that chaining, there is a vanishing probability that you could cheat across all of those things at the same time. But if you just had 1 or 2 shots to do it and you couldn't ever try again, then maybe you can only do like 1 or 2 rounds of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, for those who don't know, Weikeng has done a tremendous amount of work implementing Starks on Bitcoin, and I don't know, it's not exactly related to BitVM, but yeah, so there was this discussion at one point of using Bitcoin proof of work for grinding and using fewer of these rounds that you're describing, and because the probability of cheating decreases exponentially in the number of rounds. So you can build, I think, probably interesting sorts of things with them, but they have, in my opinion, a fundamentally different security model. It's sort of economic in some way, because you know the chance of cheating is not negligible, but maybe it's just very expensive.
Well, I can actually add it a little bit to that, although as the moderator, I shouldn't do that. But like, I think like, so one technique is kind of like this, is that one you mentioned is that you can use like the Bitcoin proof of work to kind of provide security for Fry-based like protocol. That's one way. And another way, like I think Jeremy, like because you are also in the like Starkware like workshop yesterday, that was an idea is that like, so in Snark there is a concept called naysayer proof, but basically that are proof that is more difficult to verify, but it's easy to like show that it's wrong. Basically, that you can point a specific corner and say that like, okay, just verify this part and you will find out that it's wrong. Basically, it's proof that it's like easier to show that it's wrong than like show it's right. And that like there are some like Snark protocol that actually have this like property. So you might be able to basically run a very big verifier. The verifier is actually so expensive, but when you are doing for proof, it is going to be very cheap. But I know that like Groth 16 seems to be not having this like property. So this only like present in like a few like protocol. Yeah.
And I think something that happens to contextualize this is that like academic cryptography researchers make up problems that nobody has, and then they come up with protocols that like solve that problem, and then they give themselves awards and papers and things like that and careers. And then applied cryptographers go and say, oh, I could like do something really weird with that thing, and then I could use that in the system that I'm doing. And then there's like a feedback loop of where then the academic cryptographers realize that, oh, actually people are doing this problem in the real world. And then like, can we maybe come up with something that just solves that specific problem? And it turns out that when you make the simplifying assumptions of a very specific problem, there may be really big wins. I think that's something that's very optimistic for the future of BitVM and getting the Snark verification to be really tight.
Yeah. Well, what is kind of your team's like progress on like this like Snark? Because there are also two other teams that already announced some results. What do you think like Alpen Lab will have announced, and what are something that you want to do in this like front?
Yeah, so we wrote like a blog post called Snark NATO with some of our thoughts about how to verify snarks using BitVM efficiently. And at the time, I was concerned about the practicality of BitVM 2. So as was described earlier, right, BitVM, the kind of fundamental innovation is splitting up a big script into chunks and then using Lamport signatures or some kind of signature scheme to connect data and then allow for a challenger to produce a fraud proof of invalid execution. So BitVM 2 puts all the data for all of the chunks on-chain in one shot. And the number of chunks matters a huge amount in making this practical. And there are lots of tricks that you can do to bring it down, but there's sort of this fundamental issue is like how big actually is the script? So one thing at Alpen that I've been working on is these just techniques to make the script smaller. So verifying pairings more efficiently, as well as using other things like maybe even GKR to verify pairings even more efficiently. And at this point, I feel pretty confident that BitVM 2 can be made practical. So that's sort of what we've been working on lately. But, watch this space, more coming.
Yeah, so I think it's a good time to kind of like also ask about, because like we don't, all the builders don't make a lot of the announcement, that's my feeling. So that I think I will start with Robin, is that like kind of what is the next step, what should be people expecting from like BVM?
Hopefully my team is going to release the BitVM 2 within, I don't know, the next 4 weeks, hopefully. And from then on, it would be great, to see it getting used in the ecosystem for bridging to ZK rollups, to sidechains. And I'm mostly excited about ZK coins because that is a protocol that can both increase the throughput of Bitcoin, but also gives you perfect privacy, similar to Zcash, or actually on the same level as Zcash. And privacy and throughput are the main things that I want to see improved. And I think that's the best or most interesting use case for BitVM 2 currently.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we heard from the last panel that Opcat is totally happening and 100% confidence locked in. So if you're a researcher on covenants and you believe you're totally getting all this functionality, should you be ignoring what's happening with BitVM because it's useless and goes away, or is there something that transfers even if there are whatever covenants?
I can actually give a very simple answer. Like if you have OP-CAT, verifying a proof is still quite expensive. So that so we have been working with Starkware to tap to the start verification, and I think it's almost like consensus that we will at least need to release a version that is using for proof. Have BVM will make BVM, you can see that it will make the BVM design a little bit easier because you have alternative way to do the covenant instead of multi-sig. But that the reason is this, is that if you really verify the proof from the beginning to the end, that will be thousands of the dollars or mainnet. That is too expensive. But when you have BVM, the good thing about BVM is that the cost is basically zero, most of the time. And if people are challenging, that challenger need to pay the money, right? So that the protocol have the benefit that you can kind of work for smaller use case and also larger use case. So that even for other research direction, Starkware have been doing two things. First of all, preparing a version that doesn't use OP-CAT. we're actually even thinking about finding a like Bitcoin-friendly hash function in case OP-CAT will not happen. That would solve a lot of the problem that we have today. And another like thing is that we are trying to kind of do that in the for-proof manner. Actually, the code base is now written in a way that you can quickly become a for-proof version or like a linear verified like version. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out as well, in terms of expensive. It's both expensive for the prover to do Snark verification directly on Bitcoin, but it's also like just simple math, not feasible for more than like, I don't know how many, like 10 people in total to do this at any kind of frequency, right? Just the amount of data you have to put on chain is very large. How many rollups could there be that do Snark verification directly on Bitcoin?
We're assuming that the settlement is not going to happen very frequently. Otherwise, it does take a lot of the space like from like Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe like historically, to me, BitVM right now feels really similar to like Lightning channels originally, where they were like possible, and it was just like, ooh, if there were a couple upgrades, we'd be able to do it even better. And so, but it wasn't necessary for there to be payment channels. And I think that maybe it's in a similar position right now where BitVM is fully possible. But if there are upgrades, it'll actually be really good, and these techniques will build even better things.
Yep.
Like BitVM is definitely a clunky workaround to enable snarks on Bitcoin, and it is not meant to be there forever. I think that would be very poor state if BitVM would be still a thing in like 5 years from now or so. It was more meant to shift the overtone window, and I think it did that already, that people are getting excited about forks. I don't know if CAT is the most efficient version, because as you said, even if we had CAT, proofs would still be quite expensive to verify on Bitcoin. I would like to see like an initiative of just people trying to come up with the most efficient scheme that we could come up with. I think that would be an interesting long-term perspective. But I think it totally makes sense to do it like step by step and convince people with like working things that already deliver value, and then you have like a basis to argue for more changes or for more efficient ways to do the same thing.
And I think that like it's actually a very good question. Like because the previous like session is about OP-TAC. What are you guys think about OP-TAC?
I totally dislike the Taproot people because they are shitcoiners, and I totally hate them for messing with the protocol. But on the other hand, I love Andrew Polstra, and I think it's great that he's pushing for a fork, because it's usually very painful when you push for a fork, and I think Jeremy can tell you stories about that. And I don't know, like I hate shitcoiners so much, but I want to see Bitcoin prosper. So it's a tough decision for me.
Yeah, I want Snark verification on Bitcoin. It's sort of like the universal verification primitive, and I'm pretty agnostic about how we get there. I think it's cool that CAT, like the vibes have shifted so dramatically, but I also want integer multiplication. You know.
Yeah, me too.
For suggesting things, like those two things together gets you basically all the way to a much more reasonable Snark verifier. I mean, if we could do pairings or something too, and then it'd just be trivial.
Currently, the amount of gymnastics we are doing to just multiply two numbers in Bitcoin script is absolutely ridiculous, and it would be super great to just have an opcode for that.
Like 1000x reduction in the script size. Easy.
Yeah,
and I think whether or not there are consensus changes made to Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes because people use it in different ways. And the role of a lot of, and I think this is what BitVM has really sent home, is that the changes actually keep Bitcoin more the same, because for people who are doing existing behaviors, they're less impacted by the chain load of these new applications that are taking off.
Yeah, actually that kind of like so I think like we are a little bit like wish list is that like what if like there is an opcode, maybe like a lot of the application will be easier. And actually will also reduce the cost on the like layer 1 chain because that currently we are basically letting the node do the computation, same computation in a less efficient way. I also have my like wish list. Like, so currently if you are running the same script multiple times on the same chain, every time you need to include the script in the witness. I want that to be that would be a magical like software. Is that you have a software when the script repeats for the second time, you don't need to include that. And ideally, you also don't ask me to pay for. Okay, that's not possible. But basically, you can give me a discount for that. So that would be something that would be very useful, especially for SNARK verification. Also, save a lot of the space save a lot of the block space.
Yeah, especially in the same block. If you have the same script twice in the same block, it could just be a reference.
Like programmable precompiles or something. You can like register things. It's definitely a good idea.
Covenants that can commit to inputs are also crucial to make the bridge trustless, to remove the trusted setup from the bridge. It works with opcat, unfortunately not with CTV. TXHash, I think, supports it. And the covenant opcodes, the introspection opcodes, they would do it as well. But that is definitely very critical. And like, I'm a big fan of Jeremy's work on CTV, but unfortunately for the bridge use case, it doesn't quite make it, doesn't quite fulfill it.
Do you think that OP cat like just finish what like CTV want to do? Like if there is a covenant, you can kind of do what chat template verify using OP cat.
I think that for CTV, it's just so darn efficient that in many, many protocols, people end up going back to it. I don't really, I mean, I do have a horse in the race, but I don't really have a horse in the race. I don't care. I think people just need the functionality. I did my effort to try to give that to Bitcoin. But overall, I think that whatever gets in is good. But I think people do keep coming back to CTV and new designs because it is relatively efficient. But where it's not, yeah, you need something else.
Yeah. So I think that we are also running out of the time. So that okay, we had it. Like so, I think we will have like the next panel, and that like, and if like anyone have question, like many of us are kind of around, like so just like fires. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't sim for politicians.